A local artist celebrates the African experience. That's next on City Corner. I'm Steve Potter, and welcome to City Corner. Celebrating the African Experience is an exhibition of photographs and paintings. Janet Riehl is the artist behind it all, and she joins us today. Hi, Janet. Welcome to the program.
Thank you very much.
How did you first become interested in Africa? Because let me just set it up. You're a country girl.
That's right. I like to say that I'm a country girl who roamed the world and then came home.
Right. Originally from Jersey County, Illinois, which is a stone's throw from St. Louis.
That's correct.
Just north of Alton.
I live on ancestral land that we've had since the 1860s.
Right right on the Mississippi River.
That's right,
Right.
On top of the bluffs above
Right.
the river.
So when did Africa, how did a girl from Jersey County, Illinois, ever even think about Africa?
Well, to tell the truth, men have always been my travel agents. And my first husband joined a program with U of I, which led us into Peace Corps. So in the 1970s, that's how I arrived. I stayed for 5 years. I worked with Peace Corps for 3 years, English as a second language and literature. And then later on, I traveled on my own from Ghana back to Botswana. And then for just a little geography reference, so Ghana is underneath the bulge in West Africa, and Botswana is just north of the Republic of South Africa. So we're talking about Western and then Southern Africa.
Why did you pick those two locations? Because Africa is a really big continent.
It is, with something like 55 countries. Well, I had been in Botswana working, and I had been in Ghana working. So in '75, when I left Peace Corps, I wanted to go back to Botswana where I had good language facility. And my dearest wish from the time that I arrived was to work at a community level, a village level. And that's what I ended up doing. I worked with villagers in Khabane, Botswana, to set up a sewing and craft center, which when I went back in 2008, I discovered was a multi-village vocational to technical college. So that was one of my proudest moments.
How did you handle the language there? I mean, did a lot of them speak English, or you?
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. No, the English is the official language of both Botswana and Ghana.
Oh, I didn't realize.
And in Botswana, the primary tribal language would be Setswana, and that's what I learned. And I made pretty good marks on the FSI language scale.
Now, you're an artist. This exhibition that's up in Old North St. Louis, which we're going to be talking about here, is a combination of paintings and photographs.
Yes. And so it's a bit of a retrospective in the sense that I have photos from the 1970s that would have been shot on film, real film. And then I have also paintings from my recent trip to Ghana, so 2016, that's shot digitally on my phone.
But you also do all other sorts of art, don't you? Don't you do textiles
do.
and sculpture and I don't know what else?
I do. I do all manner of things. I'm trained as a clay sculptor, but the paintings that we're showing for the exhibit, they're paintings on cloth. They're large-scale paintings on cloth, and so that's from 1990. So we have the span from the 1970s to 2016.
All right. Well, let's talk about, share some of the things you have in this exhibition that's currently up. And you're talking about empathy, our way of life, and I think this relates to Ghana, so what's the story here?
Yes. So all the photos we're going to be seeing are from my recent trip to Ghana in 2016.
And what does this mean?
Oh, I'm showing this because there's no kinder place than in than Ghana. In general, what I experienced was the great kindness and the big-heartedness. Also, I'm fascinated by signs, and Ghana has the most interesting signs.
What do you mean you're fascinated by signs?
Well, I'm an English major and a writer as well as an artist, and so signs show us both. It's words and it's also art. Mm-hmm. And the words they're like aphorisms. And so they give a complete picture into the heart of the culture. Mm-hmm. And that was a billboard.
And you say the people in Ghana, you found them to be very accessible, likable people, right?
Much more than that, just the most hospitable people in the world. And there's no one who can talk and have great conversations like Ghanaians. Really? And that's why I went back in 2016 to see old friends and make new ones and have a good talk.
Huh. Jammed.
Mm-hmm. Jammed, throughout the pictures that we're going to be viewing, there are layers of time. Now, I don't know Accra so well, that's the capital of Ghana, but on this latest trip, that's where I was. So this is a traffic jam, obviously, and one doesn't think about traffic jams in Africa, but this is the same kind of problem that we have here and other places, where the infrastructure has a leg behind the consumer. So you see these very nice cars going into a roundabout next to the presidential palace.
Mm-hmm. But I guess a city like that is very cosmopolitan, right? People from all over the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yes, exactly.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know, the personal relationships you formed, you alluded to it a second ago. I feel like during your time there, you've made a lot of good friends and you've stayed in touch with them?
Absolutely. And one of my very best friends was that I taught with in northern Ghana, became the chief director of defense, which is the highest civil service position. And now he's retired, and it's really funny to hear stories that he can finally tell.
I bet. I'm wondering what your African friends thought when they'd ask you where you were from, and you said Jersey County, Illinois.
Oh, I would never say Jersey County, Illinois. No.
You'd say St. Louis.
I wouldn't even say that.
Really?
No, I would just say, well, first of all, of course, any place one goes in the world, I'm from the United States, I'm American, and then I'm from the Midwest, and what does that mean? Well, it encompasses these states, and some people are familiar with that, and some aren't. And then at that point, I just talk about our home place, because that's really where I grew up, and we only went into Alton to work and to go to school.
Oh,
we were on the place.
Alton was the big town you traveled to.
Yes.
These next images are in a category that you call natural beauty.
Yes. And what I want folks to know is that there's a lot more to see in Africa than safaris. And so this one is a dugout canoe next to the ocean in Ada, and this one is simply beautiful mango leaves further down the coast at an eco lodge. So my point is that no matter where you are, if you're in Jersey County or where you are, we're surrounded by natural beauty.
That brings up a point that I read about you in another article, mm-hmm. Talking about comparing. You know, you think the country girl going over to Africa, it might mm-hmm. be like a big shock and mm-hmm. difference, but you were pointing out all the similarities, mm-hmm. which I found really fascinating.
Yes, primarily because I stayed in villages. I love villages. I'm not a city person.
Which is like Jersey County, little
exactly.
villages. Right.
And I found that the values that were instilled in us as a child, the hard work that we did, we were really agrarian as a family. We were self-sustaining before that became a catchword. We grew our food, put up our food, and we just worked. And that's what villagers do.
Did you know there were going to be these commonalities before you went, or is that sort of a surprise to you?
It was a pleasant surprise. Yeah. And my parents came to visit me in Africa 3 different times. They came when I was in northern Botswana and southern Botswana, and they came when I was in northern Ghana. My parents are just the most down-to-earth, natural people. And people loved meeting my parents because, especially my mother, because people love mothers and family. And so they enjoy themselves very much. And it was wonderful that they could come because they had a deeper understanding than when I came home, and that was so hard.
Are Ghana and Botswana very different?
Oh yes, very different. Botswana is probably the size of Texas, and at the time I was there, it was very sparsely populated. And it's primarily a very dry country, so dry that rain is revered. So if there's rain, then there's a chant of pula, which means rain. And it's on the flag as well. In Ghana, there's a very complex network of ecosystems, languages, tribes, and from the coast up to the north, you go from coastal and rainforest and Sahel. So very complicated.
We have some shots here of Jamestown, which is, that's part of Ghana, is it?
Yes, Jamestown is part of Accra, the capital again, and Jamestown is where the original colonials came to.
Who are the kids?
There are some girls that were strolling by at the time. There was an architect that took me to Jamestown because he has a gallery that he was setting up there. And so this was just in the vicinity where we were.
And we have a couple more shots from Jamestown, I think. That's a
Yes.
lock of some sort.
Yes, so that's, it's a very old part of town, and it hasn't really been changed all that much.
And Paint for Peace.
This one's really fun because, as we can see, again, it's the layers of time. So we've got the original Jamestown architecture, which is become a little scruffy. And then we have these wonderful murals that have been painted recently, and it's become a community gathering place, particularly for playing soccer. And when I was there, I did see a soccer game.
For somebody that's never been there, what do you think they'd be surprised about at the most?
The complexity, for one thing, because here in America, what we think of is we don't realize that Africa is a continent, not a collection of countries.
Right.
And we are constantly inundated with Africa as a place of famine and conflict and poverty, and a place where you wouldn't want to be, and a place where, you know, maybe Africans are simple people. And it couldn't be further from that. It's a place where ordinary people are kind and full-hearted, and if you are in the right place, it's a lovely place to be.
Well, Janet Riehl is our guest today. She's an artist with an exhibition that's currently up in Old North St. Louis. We'll talk more about that later. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Thank you.
So, same time next week?
Well, of course. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free tips to help you save, go to Feed the Pig.
The odds of this daughter of a clergyman spending 11 weeks at #1 on the U.S. singles charts? 1 in 19 million. The odds of going on to win 6 Grammy Awards? 1 in 1.4 million. The odds of having a child diagnosed with autism? 1 in 110. I'm Toni Braxton, and I encourage you to learn the signs of autism at autismspeaks.org.
I'm Steve Potter. Welcome back to City Corner. We're talking to artist Janet Riehl about celebrating the African experience, which is a theme of an exhibition of photographs and paintings that's now up in North St. Louis. Let's talk about that a little bit, Janet. You're part of what you call the Zuka Artist Guild.
Yes.
What is that exactly?
Well, it's been around in some form or another since the 1970s. And the people who originally founded it have gone on to become quite illustrious artists in the African American community. It's primarily African American. A friend of mine introducing me to someone looked at me and said, "Oh, this is Janet." Pause. "We've decided to diversify."
Are you the first Jersey County girl in the Zuka Guild?
I would believe so, and no doubt the only one.
Well, tell me about the actual the gallery where your exhibition is on display right now in North St. Louis. Where is it, and tell me about it.
For those of us who know St. Louis, it would be very close to Crown Candy in Old North St. Louis.
That's a plus.
Yes, you can always go down and eat a bacon sandwich that's this tall, and wonderful ice creams.
Egg salad sandwiches are good there too.
Very good.
Yeah.
And so the gallery is a community gallery, and it has all kinds of events. There are church events, there are community charity events, and on Fridays at 1 o'clock, there's wonderful music, jazz and blues.
Wow, cool. Let's look at some more of the things that are on display in your exhibition right now, and these are textiles. So tell me about them.
Well, again, these are photos from my recent trip in 2016. And what I love about this one and the one we're just about to see is, again, the layers of time, which are so fascinating, because the traditional cultures and the current culture, they exist side by side. So the first one that we were seeing, those are, that's street market, and with traditional material. And now this is a very upscale clothing and fabric store. You can see the bolts of fabric in the background. Now the mannequin, that's just draped. It's not sewn, they've just draped it. And this is in the Accra Mall, which would put any of our malls to shame. And I was totally dumbstruck to see the malls and to see this.
So can fashion in Africa be as expensive as it is here?
Probably not. It's not Saks.
You know, I hadn't thought about what you were wearing until I just looked at what we saw. Would this be from Africa?
Yes, it's from Ghana. It's from the 1970s. And
No kidding. Wow.
Yeah, no kidding. And this is machine embroidery. It's called Jarmy, and it's at that time it was made exclusively by men. And this is there's a layer here that's tie-dyed, and then there's another layer that's batik, which is the wax print.
I think it's beautiful.
Thank you very much.
How much stuff, after your years of living there and then going back and visiting, how much stuff at home from Africa do you have?
That's funny. Oh, well, because my parents traveled there 3 times, I have more. Because my mother loved to collect.
I have some African art at home. I really like it.
Yes?
Yeah.
Mainly what I collected is textiles and baskets, because I love the fiber art. And right now in my home, I have a room that's completely dedicated to baskets. It's called the basket room.
Have you ever had one of your friends from Africa come visit you here? And do you think that'll ever happen?
Oh yes, absolutely, it has happened.
Oh, it has happened.
Oh yes. The friend that became the chief director of defense came to visit me.
No kidding, wow.
Yes.
Were they as fascinated by this country as you were in theirs?
Well, he's quite sophisticated.
So he's been here.
So in Canada and Britain and all over, really.
This next thing we're going to look at from your exhibition, these are some signs on vehicles. What's the story
Yes.
behind this?
Well, again, I'm fascinated by the signs. These are moving aphorisms, again. And the signs indicate the deep values in the culture. And I call this one credo. So it's the wisdom and the understanding. And so this is called a trotro. And again, it's the layers of time. So this is now. And when I was there in the 70s, the trotros were built on Bedford trucks. They were open. It was very direct. And then now we have the trotros, which is basically like sort of a van. And this one, prayer is the key. It's a very Christian country. And then it's always, I love the signs because then we have Baby Jet. So that's the name of the trotro, and then there's the person's credo.
Do you have plans for another trip anytime soon in your mind?
Oh, always.
How often do you want to go?
Well, now that my life permits it, that I'm no longer primarily involved in caregiving for my parents, I think it would be awfully fun to go once a year.
Really, yeah.
And I would definitely go back to Ghana because that's where my friends are.
And where do you like to stay there? I mean, do you stay with people? Do you do a little B&B? Do you like a big fancy hotel, or what do you do?
Well, this last trip, I was at the University of Ghana, and that's the campus at Legon, which is beautiful. And my friend, again, same man, very carefully chose a guest house there because it had all the things he knew I would love, like the natural beauty, for instance.
Right.
And Wi-Fi.
Oh, Wi-Fi. Oh, well, thank goodness, right? What about the Chinese New Year? What does that have to do with Ghana?
Oh, there is so much development money flowing in, and one of the sources is from China. China has development money throughout Africa. This was actually very close to where I was staying. Where I was staying, I created a village around me. I call it the Portable Village. So I was walking past there, and I was invited in. This is elementary and middle school. That is the university practice school. So you see the students in the background and the dragon, which we're familiar with. And then later on during the program, we actually saw these students performing dances and songs in Chinese.
Really? Oh, that's interesting. Education, you address that topic too in this exhibition.
Yes. What I love about this one and then the next slide is the layers of time once again. So we have a kiosk that could very easily have been there in the 70s, and then, but it's not, it's there now. And then the next one, which is the statue, again on the Legon campus, which we can see is very sophisticated. So we have both.
Let me, before we look at a couple more, I want to ask you about something I mentioned earlier, talking about this country girl from Jersey County, Illinois, going to Africa, and maybe you'd think that life is so different there, and but you found so many similarities about how you grew up in Jersey County, in the rural area, and just talk about that a little bit more. I find that fascinating.
The similarities?
Yeah.
Well, I've traveled all over the world, and what I've found all over the world is that in the heart of people, we are all human beings, and then there is culture on top of that, and one needs to acculturate wherever one is. And yes, it's true that there were a lot of similarities. Since I had a deep wish to become part of the culture, I embarked really on a learning program. And I was so fortunate that the people around me, they were quite willing to correct my Setswana, which I've also found all over the world. If one attempts language, people will help teach you language. And also, customs are different, even though there were similarities. But when customs are different and one is trying to go deeply, mistakes are made. And so, again, people were so kind because they...
How many mistakes did you make?
From morning till night. And this was later on when I was in the village as an independent volunteer. But people are so kind, they very nicely corrected me and, didn't hold it against me. It was a very welcoming place.
How has your experience in Africa changed your art?
I think in general, whether it was my art or my life, what that time allowed me to do was to bring more of who I already was out. And with the art in 1990, where the large-scale paintings on cloth came from, the art came in that year in all forms, writing, art, storytelling, and so there was just this explosion of color and patterns and texture.
You mentioned the paintings on cloth, and we have a couple of images of paintings on cloth from your exhibition. That's beautiful. I always found the colors that they use in African art, are they like, I don't know how to, primary colors, they're just beautiful together, aren't they?
Absolutely. So this is a large mural. It would actually cover a wall, and it's on linen, and again, the fabric paint. It's part of a cosmology that I created in 1990, and this is called Naledi in the Underworld, or it's called The Heroine's Journey, which really harkens back to Joseph Campbell's work. And so Naledi was my name in Botswana. It means star. There are also little songs about Naledi, and if I was walking through the village, one might, little kids would sing the song to me.
Really?
So, may I?
Yeah.
Okay. Naledi, Naledi, Naledi yamo song swarana. So that means star, star, star of the morning, wake up.
Well, your exhibition is currently up. Just briefly, in a few seconds, we've sampled a little bit of it. What haven't we seen?
What you haven't seen is more of the paintings on cloth, and particularly you haven't seen the photos from the 1970s, which were shot on slide film, and I don't have on my camera.
But let's remind people, celebrating an African experience through September the 25th at the Zuga Arts Guild. That's in North St. Louis near Crown Candy Kitchen on 14th Street. And that's your website there. And
Correct.
people can, I guess, find out more about your art and the other things that you're
Yes.
interested in. So do you have a planned trip back to Africa yet? Have you got it on the calendar? Or?
No, we'll see. And I particularly want to welcome people to my gallery talk, my last gallery talk.
Mention that, yes.
And it'll be Sunday, the last day of the show.
The 25th?
On the 25th at 2 o'clock at the Community Artists Gallery. And I believe we have an address for it here.
I'm not sure if we do, but they could go to your website, I guess, and look it up.
Well, it's 2701 North 14th Street. It's at 14th and Montgomery.
Janet
and
Riehl, thank you for
North.
your work, and it's fascinating the way that you examine Africa and you bring it to us. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. It's been a pleasure.
That's all the time we have for this edition of City Corner. Thanks for watching. See you at the Art Gallery. Bye-bye.